Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. This is a place where we explore fascinating lore, hidden details, and deep analyses from the Lord of the Rings. Today's video is a documentary-style analysis that dives into one of the darkest forces in Middle-earth, the Balrogs of Morgoth, their origins as corrupted Maiar, and the long shadow they cast from the First Age to the days of Gandalf and Durin's Bane in Moria. If you enjoy thoughtful Tolkien content like this, please like the video and consider subscribing. This channel is still growing, and your support truly makes a difference. The Balrogs were among the most feared servants of Morgoth, and their origins reach back to the very beginning of the world. They were once Maiar, spirits of the same order as Sauron, Gandalf, and Eowyn. During the music of the Ainur, when the world was first shaped through harmony and discord, some of these Maiar were drawn to Melkor, later known as Morgoth. Whether through admiration, fear, or corruption, they followed him into rebellion, and in doing so, they were twisted into beings of shadow and flame. When Melkor entered Arda, he raised the fortress of Utumno in the far north of Middle-earth. There, he gathered the spirits who had bound themselves to him, and over time they became more like their master. Tolkien describes them as having hearts of fire, yet cloaked in darkness, wielding weapons of flame and spreading terror wherever they went. Of all Morgoth's servants, the Balrogs were said to be the most dreadful. In later ages, they would be known as Valarakar, demons of terror, feared even among Morgoth's own hosts. After the destruction of the two lamps, Morgoth summoned his servants once more to Utumno. But with the awakening of the elves, the Valar finally moved against him. In the Battle of the Powers, Utumno was destroyed, and Morgoth was defeated. The Balrogs fled eastward and hid themselves in Angband, Morgoth's second great fortress, where they waited alongside Sauron for their master's return. That return came after Morgoth escaped from Valinor with the Silmarils, accompanied by Ungoliant. When Ungoliant later turned on him in Beleriand, growing vast and terrible, Morgoth cried out in fear. Hearing his call, the Balrogs rushed across the land like a storm of fire. With their flaming swords, they drove Ungoliant away and saved their master. From that moment on, the shadow of the Balrogs would fall heavily over the wars of the First Age, shaping the fate of elves and men alike. The elves would not fully understand the threat of the Balrogs until the Dagor Nuin Gileath, the battle under stars. In this first great clash of the First Age, Fëanor, High King of the Noldor, led his people against the orcs of Morgoth and won a swift victory. But driven by his burning desire to confront Morgoth himself, Fëanor pressed forward into enemy territory, far beyond the safety of his host. There, he was ambushed by a force of Balrogs, and among them stood Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs. In the battle that followed, Gothmog dealt Fëanor a mortal wound. Though Fëanor was rescued by his sons, the damage was beyond healing, and he soon died of his injuries. With his death, the terrible power of the Balrogs was made clear to the elves of Beleriand. From that moment on, Gothmog and his kind became central weapons in Morgoth's wars, leading assaults and breaking the strongest defenses of elves and men alike. For centuries, the Balrogs remained a constant and terrifying presence along the frontiers of Angband. Their next great unleashing came during the Dagor Bragollach, the Battle of Sudden Flame. Morgoth released rivers of fire across the plains of Ard Galen, and Balrogs marched alongside Glaurung, the first of the dragons. The once green lands were burned into the wasteland of Anflith, and entire realms that had stood for 400 years were destroyed in a matter of days. Despite their losses, the free peoples would make one final, desperate stand. In the Nirnaeth Arnudiad, the unnumbered Tears, elves and men formed a great alliance to challenge Morgoth's power. But the battle ended in disaster. The hosts of Angband, including orcs, dragons, and Balrogs, overwhelmed their enemies. In this battle, Gothmog slew Fingin, the High King of the Noldor, and on Morgoth's command, he captured Hurin alive. Bound and taken to Angband, Hurin would face Morgoth's torment, while the shadow of the Balrogs continued to darken the fate of the First Age. It would not be until the fall of Gondolin that an elf would truly overcome a Balrog in single combat, and even then, the victory would come at a terrible cost. After Morgoth learned the hidden location of Gondolin, he unleashed a vast host of orcs, Balrogs, and dragons against the city. As the surviving elves attempted to escape through a secret mountain pass, they were confronted by a Balrog blocking their path. At that moment, Glorfindel, the same elf lord later encountered in the Fellowship of the Ring, chose to stand alone. He remained behind to face the demons so that the others could flee to safety. Upon a narrow pinnacle of rock, Glorfindel and the Balrog fought fiercely, blade against flame and shadow. In the end, Glorfindel struck down the Balrog, but as it fell, it seized him, and both plunged into the abyss below, perishing together. Meanwhile, within the city itself, another fateful duel unfolded. In the king's square of Gondolin, Ecthelion, Lord of the Fountain, came face to face with Gothmog, Lord of Balrogs. Their battle was brutal and desperate. At last, Ecthelion drove the spike of his helm into Gothmog's chest and cast both himself and the Balrog into the deep fountain of the city. There, the fire of Gothmog was extinguished, and both perished in the waters. With this, two of Morgoth's greatest Balrogs were lost in a single day. These events raise an important question: how many Balrogs were there truly? In Tolkien's earliest writings, he imagined vast numbers, even thousands. But in later texts, as the true power of the Balrogs became clearer, he revised this idea. They were few, perhaps no more than 3, or at most 7. Had there been many more, Morgoth might have dominated all of Middle-earth outright. If only a handful existed, then after the fall of Gondolin, very few would have remained. Some were destroyed in the War of Wrath, while others fled and hid themselves deep beneath the roots of the world. These survivors vanished into inaccessible caverns, waiting through the long ages as the First Age came to its violent end. One of those survivors endured far beyond the First Age, hiding deep beneath the roots of the Misty Mountains. This Balrog would later be known as Durin's Bane. After the War of Wrath ended the First Age and Morgoth was cast into the void, the Balrogs were thought to be destroyed, save for a few that escaped and concealed themselves in inaccessible depths of the world. Durin's Bane remained hidden for thousands of years, slumbering through the Second Age and most of the Third. Deep beneath Khazad-dûm, the great dwarven realm founded by Durin the Deathless, the Balrog waited in silence. For more than 5,000 years, it lay undisturbed, becoming little more than a forgotten terror buried in ancient stone. Khazad-dûm flourished above it, growing rich through the mining of mithril, the most precious metal of Middle-earth. In the year 1980 of the Third Age, the dwarves delved too deeply. While expanding their mines in search of more mithril, they awakened the Balrog. In the darkness below, Durin's Bane rose in fire and shadow. The following year, it slew King Durin VI, earning the name by which it would be feared ever after. Soon after, it also killed his heir, King Nine I, breaking the power of the dwarves in Khazad-dûm. Unable to stand against such a foe, the dwarves abandoned their ancient halls. The realm fell into ruin, and the elves of Lorien came to call it Moria, the Black Chasm. They referred to the creature within only as the Nameless Terror, not fully understanding its true nature at the time. For centuries, Moria remained under the shadow of the Balrog. Orcs and other dark creatures later came to dwell there, especially after Sauron began preparing for war once more around the year 2480 of the Third Age. Whether Durin's Bane served Sauron or merely tolerated his servants is unclear, but its presence allowed evil to fester unchecked in the depths of the Misty Mountains, waiting for the moment it would emerge again into the history of Middle-earth. For many years, the true nature of the terror within Moria remained largely unknown. One of the few who sensed what lurked there was Dain Ironfoot. During the Battle of Azanobizar in 2799 of the Third Age, Dain fought alongside the dwarves against the orcs and slew Azog before the east gate of Moria. When the battle was won and the gate stood open, Dain looked inside the ancient halls. There, he perceived the presence of the Balrog and felt its overwhelming terror. He warned his people, and because of this, the dwarves chose not to reclaim Khazad-dûm. Instead, they returned to their former homes and later settled in the Blue Mountains, leaving Moria to its darkness. For the next several centuries, Durin's Bane remained hidden, and the Balrog was rarely spoken of. In the year 3019 of the Third Age, fate finally brought others into its domain. In January of that year, the Fellowship of the Ring entered Moria while journeying toward Mount Doom. After discovering the tomb of Balin in the chamber of Mazarbul, Gandalf sensed that something far more dangerous than orcs or trolls was stirring in the depths. As the Fellowship fled through the halls, Gandalf stayed behind to seal the door against their pursuers. In that moment, he encountered a power unlike any he had faced before. Through the door, he felt a presence that caused even the orcs to fall silent in fear. Gandalf struggled to hold the door shut, forced to speak words of command as opposing power pressed against him. The strain was immense, and when the door finally burst apart, a shadow like a living cloud filled the chamber, hurling Gandalf down the stairs. The Fellowship soon realized the truth on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. There, the Balrog revealed itself, a vast shape of shadow and flame, man-like yet far greater, radiating terror and power. Legolas recognized it at once and cried out its name, while Gimli hid his face in despair. Gandalf alone stood against it, barring its path and declaring that it could not pass. In their final clash, Gandalf and the Balrog fell together into the abyss below the bridge. For 8 days, Gandalf pursued Durin's Bane through the deepest dungeons of the world, until they climbed to the peak of Ziraxigil. There, after 3 days and 2 nights of battle, Gandalf defeated the Balrog, breaking its body upon the mountainside. In doing so, he gave his life, destroying the last known Balrog of Morgoth and ending a terror that had endured since the First Age. With the fall of Durin's Bane, the long and violent history of the Balrogs seemed, at last, to come to an end. Yet when looking across the map of Middle-earth, it is difficult not to wonder whether others may have survived, hidden far beyond the knowledge of elves, men, and dwarves. The writings of the First Age suggest that while many Balrogs were destroyed in the War of Wrath, a few may have fled and concealed themselves in the deepest and most inaccessible places of the world. If so, they would have remained buried beneath stone and shadow, cut off from the great events of later ages. These creatures were forces of destruction on a scale rarely seen, remnants of Morgoth's original power. A single Balrog, as seen in Moria, was capable of breaking entire kingdoms and shaping the course of history through fear alone. It is sobering to imagine what devastation might have followed had more of them emerged during the War of the Ring. The survival of Middle-earth may have depended not only on courage and sacrifice, but also on the silence of these ancient horrors. The Balrogs stand as symbols of the First Age itself, an era defined by gods walking the world, by wars that shattered continents, and by evils so great that their echoes lasted for thousands of years. From the music of the Ainur to the depths of Khazad-dûm, their story stretches across the entire legendarium, connecting the earliest days of creation to the final struggles against Sauron. Even in defeat, they remind us of how close the world once came to utter ruin. As we trace these events across the lands of Middle-earth, maps become more than simple guides. They are windows into history, allowing us to follow the paths of armies, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and the hidden places where ancient powers once slept. Seeing the world laid out before us makes the scale of these stories feel real, grounded, and immense. In the end, the Balrogs are remembered not just as monsters of fire and shadow, but as living remnants of Morgoth's will. Their destruction marked the slow fading of the ancient world, leaving Middle-earth forever changed, and ensuring that such terrors would never again walk openly beneath its skies.